Welcome back to Coaches on the Beach. And today, Colin's got his lights on in his room, so we aren't going to go dark mode.
I'm trying to learn from my mistakes. I'm trying to make some adjustments out here. So this is all about growing and adapting, which is all we ask our athletes to do, and that's all I'm doing for myself. So here we are, lights
Sorry to
on.
put you on blast there. I know
No,
we
it's
didn't talk
cool.
about that, but it just came to
Great.
my.
Super grateful to be back with Michael, I guess. And we have the merry-go-round carousel up at the top of the NCAA beach volleyball world. Clash of the Titans round 9. I know it's only been 8 weeks, but feels like 9 clashes of each other. We have a new number one who's an old number one. UCLA reclaims the top spot after a nice 3-2 victory over TCU. TCU stays at 2. Stanford, I guess, proving that they're still really good. I'm not exactly sure how you're going to really identify the difference between 1 through probably 7 in the country. Probably a coin toss on all that. But Michael, was there any other fun ones for you?
Yeah, I think Stetson going 1-1 this weekend and not moving. That was a different experience there, losing to Georgia State and beating ULM there. Obviously, very inapt to the ASUN and getting a third member of the ASUN into the top 20, Florida Gulf Coast, breaking in. I think they well deserve it. They've been playing really well, especially down the stretch. So happy for Chris down there and that team, and excited to see them in a week and a half at the ASUN tournament. But I think Hawaii had another 0-4 weekend. They played some tough ones out there. That was the tournament that I was kind of talking about last week with GCU and Cal. Cal did their thing and they got their job done. I think they've kind of made their mark into the tournament, and they moved up a spot here. Long Beach went down a spot after a 0-4 weekend, or 4-0 weekend, sorry. Sorry, Long Beach, don't get on me about that. But yeah, I think the Clash of the Titans tournaments has kind of it's made it a little bit more difficult for the moving piece, because now you start looking at it of like, all right, who's getting into this tournament, who's getting left out. Well, some of these teams have been playing these Titans at the top of the rankings every single weekend, but they don't really have any good wins on their resume. And then you got Florida Gulf Coast, who's knocking off FAU, who has now kind of fallen a little bit in their rankings. They went from 15 to 18 this week, so I don't really know what to take of it. And you say it a couple times at the beginning of the season every year. Rankings don't really mean that secures your spot into the tournament. And I think it's going to be kind of interesting to see all these at-large bids get placed on teams that, usually have that opportunity to earn the bid for their championship, and now they have to fight for this at-large bid. But all eyes are on this tournament now. I mean, it's gonna be a weird one.
Yeah, I mean, you already mentioned Cal, right? They did what they needed to do. They have another weekend where they kind of have to do the same thing, right? They have to
Yeah.
beat Washington, they have to beat Davis, they have to beat Santa Clara. If they beat Stanford, right, that helps the case, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's not do or die for them. And then on the other side, right, I think Arizona State, like they right now, they're one of my first four out, right? Arizona
Mm-hmm.
State's right on the line with LSU and Grand Canyon for me about being kind of the last four in. And or Grand Canyon I still have out as well. But anyway, long and short of it, Arizona State signature win over Florida State.
Yeah.
Right, maybe that moves them into that spot where LSU now has to do something at their tournament. I think it will be very close in that determining factor as we decide who's gonna be that final at large position. So, shout out ASU for beating Florida State. I think Florida State's. I don't want to say they're locked up, but they're pretty close to locked up. But an 0-4 weekend made it harder on themselves and gave Arizona State a glimmer of hope, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I meant, if we want to jump right into it, I meant talking tournament wise. Does the FSU win for Arizona State help at Arizona State more or hurt Florida State more?
I think it helps ASU more, right? I mean, like I said, they're one of those first four out for me right now.
Mm-hmm.
And they were lacking a signature win, right? They were
Yeah.
lacking that victory over a top tier squad. Not that obviously Hawaii's done a good job, and Stetson and Grand Canyon. Those are all ranked opponents. Georgia State, that's a ranked opponent. But Florida State was the first time they beat somebody above them,
Yeah.
right? Some that's guaranteed to be in the tournament right now. So I think that was a big move for them, right? Whereas we're kind of looking at LSU, they've got a head-to-head win over Arizona State. They also have a win over SC. They also have a win over Long Beach and over Cal. Right? So LSU has more of those signature wins now. They maybe have a few more quote unquote bad losses in there, and they have opportunities for some more bad losses. But ultimately, I think it helps Arizona State. I don't think it hurts Florida State that much. They're in, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of a coin flip between where do you want to put them? 5, 6, 7, or 8? I mean,
And that
at a certain point, who cares?
when I was doing my end of the sheet over here, like my last four in, my first three, I'm like, yeah, they're solidly in the tournament. I don't see like Florida State would really have to flop. They're my second last four in, but they would
Yeah,
really have to flop in this last tournament that they have for the CCSA to even remotely raise a question of they're not in the tournament. Now
yeah,
the last spot LSU that is my last first four or last in, and my next line would be Arizona State. So you're I think we're on the same page. Grand Canyon is also in there. I also flipped my ASUN championship bid from Stetson from last week to now UNF of this week.
ooh,
I get the special privilege of we are in the ASUN, so we are in the video share. So I got to watch the games. And it's a nice little benefit about doing a conference exchange for video. And I think UNF is playing really, really well. And honestly, hoping for the ASUN, like you got Stetson, who has some good victories. Like they have some really large victories. The LMU win was a really big one. So I think they have a better shot of getting an at-large bid. But watching the film, I think UNF does have the edge on Stetson right now of how they're playing down the stretch. So my first four out is Arizona State, Grand Canyon, Stetson, Florida Gulf Coast. I think Florida Gulf Coast is a little bit of a shot. They got a couple games coming up. One against maybe a teal team from Carolina somewhere. I don't know.
yeah, they're
That
playing
would
Wilmington. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, obviously we'll play them this weekend, and yeah,
yeah.
there will be an opportunity for. There's good opportunity. I think the Georgia State match is a good opportunity for them.
Mm-hmm.
I think obviously you can't lose to us
Yep.
at Coastal, right? You can't lose to Jacksonville, and you
Can't lose
can't
to
lose to
South
South Carolina.
Carolina. Yep.
Yeah, you got to win. You got to go 3-1. If you go 4-0, I think you work yourself into the conversation. But at the same point, I really think, like you're talking about, right? My first 4, 5 at-large bids are like, am I not going to put TCU in the tournament? We're not going to put Florida State, USC, Stanford, like Texas. Those teams are in. Cal's probably in. Long Beach is probably in. Yes, we're sitting at LSU. We're looking at Arizona State. We're looking at Grand Canyon. Then it's another, I don't want to say drop off, but it is a little bit of a gap between those three schools, Grand Canyon, LSU, and Arizona State. And then when you get to North Florida, when you get to the Corpus, when you get to the FGC, like, or Stetson, if that's, if you
Yeah.
put them as a non-ASUN champion, right? I think once you get to those squads, it gets a lot tougher because there aren't those big wins. And there
Yeah.
are a few more of those quote unquote bad losses,
Yeah.
so
And
you kind of in that
another
space.
another point to this. Sorry for interrupting, but I think another thing is we do have this weekly clash of the Titans.
Yeah.
So how many opportunities are these schools getting to go out and play these schools to get those wins or even the good losses, quote unquote?
Yeah.
Like it's the same teams playing each other every year, and they're just protecting their spot in the tournament.
We talk about this all the time, right? And we talked about it last week too. Like North Florida and Texas A&M Corpus Christi, I think are two teams that are playing really good volleyball and
Mm-hmm.
probably do deserve a shot to play in the national tournament. Unfortunately, scheduling is getting in their way, and that's budgetarily.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many factors, right? But to be fair, I can't remember who it was, but somebody I was talking to, they're like, yeah, if you're Stanford or LSU, do you really want to play North Florida?
No.
Like, there's literally no benefit to you playing them, and there's only a chance of you losing, and they are a good enough team to beat you.
Yeah.
I mean, last year, Coastal Carolina was 2 points away from beating LSU when they were ninth in the country.
Yeah.
Like, there was no incentive to play that match from their end, and there's everything for us, and there's nothing to lose, and there's just so much. As long as our sport will continue to reward not losing as much as it until it begins to reward, playing a good schedule and challenging yourselves and having big wins while also having maybe some bad losses, right? Until it hits that versus what it is right now, which is a consistency based ranking. I think it'll be hard to convince teams to schedule like that, or if we find a way to maybe RPI it, a little true volley action. Because right now, Florida Gulf is like 17th in true volley
Yep.
and is just now cracking the top 20 in a, I don't want to call it an arbitrary ranking, but it is kind of an arbitrary ranking, right?
Yep.
It's a bunch of coaches that decide every week what it is.
Yep.
That's not totally fair, right? And so until we kind of hit a space where we're looking at that, I think it's going to be harder to see these teams convinced to play different competition.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I mean, going into the tournament seeding, I did want to point out I did move two teams. One of them being UCLA. I put them back at 1. And then still have USC as number 2, but they're still my MPSF champs. I think after this past week, USC going 4-0 and then only moving a couple spots, I was just like, all right, maybe I'm daydreaming that they're going to get into the 1 spot. But,
Well,
I mean,
they took the loss, right? They took the loss to Stanford.
did they?
Yeah, yeah. So they
Oh,
went
yeah.
3-1 on the weekend, right? Stanford had a huge.
There it is. Yep.
Stanford also went 3-1 on the weekend, right? They beat Cal Poly, Florida State, SC, but lost to UCLA. USC had a big weekend, but lost to SC or lost to Stanford. I mean, right? But beating Cal Poly is a good win. Beating LMU is a good win. There's a little caveat, and you and I talked about it a little bit. That LMU win had some like lineup shakiness, right? A
Mm-hmm.
ones player from LMU was injured. SC wound up winning that match 15-13 in the third set. There's some obviously discrepancies in the lineup and conversation pieces that have that, but either way, it's still a win and it's still a good win.
Yeah. How important do you think it is between the 1, 2, 3 seed into this tournament?
I mean, what's going to be the major difference, right? The one seed's going to play the OVC champ, the two seed's going to play the Southland champ, and the three seed's going to play the Sun Belt champ. I mean, at a certain point, like, I wish, don't get me wrong, as planning on being the Sun Belt champion and going out there and toppling somebody, I would like to think that Cal Poly's a little nervous seeing us for the second time,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think the scariest part of those three teams is you might not have played one of us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I think that's got to be a bigger fear than anything. And maybe the fact that you're getting off the plane and you're shaking it out, and maybe Chattanooga had a shorter bus ride, or Corpus had a shorter bus ride, or even Coastal got to jump down there. But I think there isn't really much change, and honestly, I don't think there's much change until you hit the 8-9 matchup. I mean, 7-10 is probably not great, but like 6-11, like once you hit 6-11, 5-12, 4-13, right? I think you're kind of like, all right, whatever. We'll take whoever you put in front of us.
Yeah.
And as long as you're higher than the 7 seed, you're probably like, I think we're gonna be fine.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like usually it is like that 1 seed has the easiest road to the championship. I think after that first round, like everyone's gonna start to hit each other anyways. I would think the biggest challenge would be the styles of play. Because you get into like a Stetson, who they play a traditional game, or a UNF, but like they aren't as physical as what you would see at UCLA, USC. And sometimes that style change could kind of interact, and like the blockers have to pull more. Maybe that gets into their head. It's a different environment. Like no one's played at Gulf Shores yet this year. Usually they have that March to May tournament. I don't know if that affects anything, or you would hope that the environment doesn't affect the game that much, but maybe that different style. Chattanooga with their fives pair, I love to watch their fives pair. They're a double down type of defense. They're just flying around the court, and they can get teams out of system. Now, do I think UCLA, TCU are going to have a problem with that? Probably not. But at the same time, who knows? Who knows if that style gets into their head after those long rides, those flights, that type of thing.
Yeah, that dance party at the hangout the night before. I mean, the one thing that you always see about the Gulf Shores, right, is that the wind can pick up and be pretty unpredictable. We saw it with Stetson versus Southern Cal a few years back
Yep.
when Stetson took that big win. Right, it's definitely feasible, and I guess you're looking more to the weather to probably do the impacting for you than you are actually the opponent. And yeah, a style of play can impact that. Like if it's, um, let's say Wilmington wins the Sun Belt championship, right, and it's raining and windy. Listen, David Fisher is going to have that team ready to serve sky balls and deep floats and things that are going to make people's lives hell. And like that's going to be a real pain in the backside if you happen to play them during that particular weather scenario
Yeah.
in that particular moment and they happen to utilize it and play successfully within it, which they might. They're an older squad. They do a good job. Like, you know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
just a lot of things that have to go right for the underdog in some of these games to come out on top. Whereas like once you hit the 7-10 or even the 6-11 matchup, like there is a skill piece that can come in. There's a style play piece that can come in. I think I would love to see I don't know, let's say a 14 seed from the Sun Belt, maybe take down a 3 seed. Like I think that would be a fun thing and definitely could happen in a winner take all in a college volleyball match. I
Yeah.
don't think I would bet money on it if
Yeah.
I was a betting person.
Yeah. That's what Georgia State did a couple years ago to TCU, right? It was still that
Georgia,
double elimination, but
yeah, but Georgia State was the 10 seed
okay.
and had Florida Gulf's ones defender paired up with Stetson's ones blocker playing in their threes pair. Let's not quite chalk it up. And meanwhile, in the twos or threes for Texas Christian, it was Alexis Philippone, who don't get me wrong was awesome, but was like gassed out of her mind. Had played in like the fours for Pepperdine, right?
Yeah.
And it's not the TCU team of today, and it's not like Georgia State. Don't get me wrong, Best still does a good job. She doesn't have that kind of senior leadership on this group.
Yeah.
Right. There's no Maddie Del Monte
Okay.
and Eden Hawes roaming around. There's no Maddie Johnson roaming around. Like she's got Destiny White, who's going to be a great player. Savannah Ebarb is doing a great job. I'm trying to think of, obviously I'm forgetting like 5 Georgia State studs that are doing Ayla Johnson, Ari Keller. Right. Those are all really good players for her and will do a really great job. I don't know if it's quite I don't think it's fair to compare that team to the
Okay.
2022 team
Yeah.
that pulled off that big upset, right?
Yeah.
I think we still haven't seen an upset that would be of the caliber that we'll see if a 12 beats a 5
Yeah.
or
That makes
13.
sense. I mean, everything in nature would say that you are definitely correct. Me being a dreamer for the little guy just hopes one person can just pull it off.
Hey, just keep dreaming, and I'll let you know in about 2 weeks if I want the dream to come true or not. You know, and obviously, like we're gonna fight for it, and I think we're gonna battle for it. Like I think you have to at a certain point you have to go, hey, this is 18 to 22-year-old college people.
Yeah.
Like anything can happen. Now, can it be us to make it happen? Right, that's a whole other
Yes.
conversation. But I would agree that that's you have to go into the match thinking about it.
Yeah. So I'm gonna read off my rankings of where I got people now, just to kind of wrap this section up. I got UCLA at 1 as the first at-large bid, USC as 2 with the MPSF championship, TCU as 3 with the next at-large, Stanford at 4, Cal Poly wins their conference, LMU winning their conference, Texas with another at-large bid, Long Beach, Florida State, Cal, and LSU with the next at-large bid. Then down in the 12 spot, I got FAU winning their conference. I think they'll bounce back from this past weekend. Georgia State in the Sun Belt. Again, sorry, Colin. UNF for the ASUN. Boise for Southland. Still, I'm pulling for them to be able to get something done down in New Orleans. And then Chattanooga with the OVC because Darren gave us that guarantee. So you gotta stick with the word.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, mine didn't change too much. Hot take. I don't think one weekend should be that drastic of a change, especially not when they've all played
Yeah.
each other times to begin with.
I'm just
So I
trying to
still
give us some more talking points.
hey, I like it. That's what you and I need is reasons to talk. I got TCU at 1, UCLA at 2, Cal Poly 3, LMU 4. Southern Cal gets the 5 spot. Stanford gets the 6 spot. Florida State does drop down to the 7 spot for me. Once again, I think it's rather arbitrary at that point, but Florida State, you get an 0-4 weekend, it gets a little tougher. I got Texas at 8, but I think that's a soft 8. Right? I mean, they're a team that probably should be. They've only gotten better.
Yeah.
Right, going to be a big piece. I got Cal 9, Long Beach 10. Stetson as the ASUN champ. I've got it at 11. Their loss to Georgia State doesn't change that a ton for me. 12 seed being our final at large. I still have it as LSU.
Okay.
But I think Arizona State's like, hi, hello, this is us, we're right here. And then FAU, Coastal Carolina, Texas A&M, Corpus Christi win in the Southland, and Chattanooga for Darren's guarantee. So not a ton of change, but I think there are some teams that are starting to knock. I think there's some numbers that could totally shift around.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, if these teams aren't there, as far as an at-large conversation goes, if those teams aren't there, I would be in a little bit of surprise.
Who would you say? I'm gonna put you on the spot here. Who has the most to lose out of this next weekend?
Out of this upcoming
This
weekend,
upcoming weekend, you got a lot of senior day matches. You got couple tournaments with a couple big hitters. I'm looking at the schedule that we have written down here.
I mean, Arizona State takes a loss to Benedictine. They're probably out. I think that's I mean, that's definitely the most. But same thing like Texas Christian takes a loss to ULM or Missouri State, right? And
Yeah.
they're not out. Actually, I take that back. That would not be the scenario that happens. I think North Florida, right? Like they're a team that probably needs to ride some momentum
Mm-hmm.
going into their conference tournament. So taking a loss there could be tough for them. A loss not to Texas or Cal Poly, right?
Yeah.
Like a loss
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
North Florida or Southern Miss, or loss to Corpus, or Southern Miss. That would probably make it tougher on them.
What about the most to gain? Who can go out there and just play? Hey, we're gonna play. If it happens, it happens, and we can run with it.
I think Grand Canyon probably
Yeah.
is the most to gain, right? Like you go play free, you go beat the daylights out of, ULM, Missouri State, and Houston Christian if you can. Obviously, they're good teams and they'll do their best against them. But like, you go play free against them, and then you never know what happens against TCU, and you go
Mm-hmm.
beat TCU, and all of a sudden it's like Arizona State, hey, and they've got an MPSF tournament that can provide them
Yeah.
some more firepower, right? I think where you're running into some trouble is like if you're a Corpus or a North Florida, like your conference tournament's not going to earn you much.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to work your way into at-large conversation with it. Same thing with Georgia State, FAU, those schools, even Arizona State. Like it's going to be really hard to make a case next week.
Yeah.
Like Arizona State's case is kind of done. They beat UTEP, they beat Benedictine, they go beat Utah, and they go beat Arizona, and then they theoretically lose to TCU. Like there's not much to be done there.
Yeah.
Right. And so that makes it harder. LMU's the same way. Obviously, they're not in the same conversation, but it's like, what are you going to do other than beat Pepperdine, Santa Clara? That's not going to earn you a ton of firepower. So I think I give those guys their best shot. I think Grand Canyon's got the best chance to be free and make their case for themselves.
I think for me, again, dreaming. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
Washington for me, because if they can go
Ooh,
out there and beat Cal, beat Stanford, and then finish out the rest of their weekend, like I think they could possibly find their way back into the conversation. I don't know if they get into the conversation, but I think their name comes up in that meeting room that they're talking about which teams are in.
I think you're lost on it though, right? I think they're below 500.
Are they really?
I don't think Washington can make it.
Well
I think
then, we're gonna scratch that and we're just gonna keep moving. Colin, who you got going on this
I
weekend?
was like, hold on. I think like that sounds great. Oh no, hold on. They're 14-14.
Okay.
Okay, 14-14. So what do they got this weekend?
They would have they're at Stanford, so it's Stanford. Who is this? Santa Clara, Cal, UC Davis.
All right, so you give a 4-0 weekend.
Mm-hmm.
One, you've cleared the above 500. You've got a win over number 4 or 5 Stanford.
Yeah.
You got a win over 8 or 9 Cal. you probably need another one in there because you already have a loss to Santa Clara, right? Like you already
Yeah.
have that
Well, they would
bad
also have
loss.
their tournament coming up that following weekend as well.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. Is like you'd
Okay.
have to go get some wins at that tournament. I don't know if a 4-0 weekend gets you. It does get you back in the conversation because you
Okay.
have to beat Stanford and you have to beat Cal.
All right. I'm not completely crazy then.
You're
People
not
can still
completely
listen
crazy.
to me.
I was like, I think they're under 500 dudes, which is going to make it really impossible. But no, they took big wins, right? They beat Oregon twice, and then they 5-0 to FIU. They lost
Hmm.
3-2 to Long Beach, right? So UW playing some good ball late in the year. They didn't get their signature Cal up in Seattle match though.
Yeah.
This is right, right. That's where we're really missing out. That's where you usually make up some ground if you're Washington. Now you got to do it down in the Bay. That might be tougher.
But all right. Well, we're walking into the last weekend before conference tournaments come up. Colin, where are
Ooh.
you going? What are you doing?
Headed to the Palmetto Invitational. Got a real light schedule. We start off with the Dolphins of Jacksonville. We followed up with the conference championship match against Georgia State. Right, winner takes all.
There you
Winner's
go.
the one seed. Winner's the regular season Sun Belt champion. Get some good momentum. Then we go into newly ranked top 20 Florida Gulf Coast, where Chris Sweat has been piling up 3-2 victor or three's been piling up the 3-2 losses,
Yeah.
which, as you and I both know, I consider banking 3-2s. And then we close it out with the home team Gamecocks, and so I imagine they're probably still not super fired up about how we played them last time, and we'll be ripping and roaring to not let us do it again. So
Yep.
pretty much the most dangerous weekend of the year. I'm excited though because I think I like the opportunity to play Jacksonville always. A team
Mhm.
we haven't seen yet, a team that that we kind of know, a team that is so unpredictable.
Mhm.
That lineup has changed like 15 times in the last 2 weeks, which means our girls kind of have to go in and play their game, right? Like, hey, you're gonna have to kind of adapt because I know all these gals, right? And so like I can help you with a little bit about them, but that's not scouting a pair.
Yeah.
These gals don't even know each other that well. They barely play together. And so I think it's really fun to play that and to kind of challenge yourself that way. And then if you can't get fired up and emotional to play for a conference championship, like what are you doing?
Yeah.
So getting ready for Georgia State is just going to be a hoot and a half. And then you always get love chances against ranked opponents against Florida Gulf Coast. Chris, like I said, he loves playing 3-2 duels. I'd like to hand him another 3-2 loss or maybe a 5-0 loss and send him on his merry way. And then, listen, very few things would please the people at Coastal Carolina more than having a 2-0 year over South Carolina. So we're 1-0 right now, but a 2-0 year over South Carolina. Listen, a 4-0 weekend. I told I get a little grief. My hair's getting a little long right now. You might be able to see it in the video. But we're on a winning streak, right? And to quote Bull Durham, you don't mess with a winning streak. And so it's been kind of a running joke. But I'm like, listen, I'm cutting my hair. I'm not cutting my hair till we lose, and I don't plan on losing.
There you go.
And so the bet is that if I will grow my hair out all summer long when we go win this thing, and I'll save it until we lose an indoor match in the fall,
Yeah,
which we might not do that either. So
yeah, sounds like a very emotional weekend for you.
yeah, it's gonna be great. I'm
But
super fired up. There's enough coffee. My dad's in town, so I'm fired up about that. Get to see my pops. He'll probably listen to this on the drive to Columbia because he's gonna come join the squad. So that'll be fun. But hopefully he'll provide me lots of coffee to enjoy it. Michael, what about you?
yeah, we're on our bye weekend for the last bye going into the conference tournament. We're healing up. We're kind of trying to perfect our skills a little bit. I think one thing that's kind of nice is that we know where we're going to be in the conference tournament, so we're starting to prepare already. It
Love it.
looks like Stetson will be the number one seed. We'll get the 8 seed, and we're able to now prepare for a week and a half.
Nice.
Which
Yeah.
is super nice for us being able to look ahead and dive deeper on a team than your normal 3 day turnaround from weekend to weekend.
Yeah.
So we might be able to come in and surprise some teams, but I'm not going to say that out loud because then they won't be surprised. Um,
We'll tell Christina and Alvaro not to listen to the podcast, right?
I don't think we got to tell them.
Yeah. We forgot to do the beach chair, Michael. Who are you
Right.
giving your beach chair award to?
The beach share is going out to Cal. I mean, I put a lot of pressure on them last weekend, saying you got to get it done. I think they had a great weekend out in Hawaii. Got things done out there. Went 4-0. Had 1-3-2 victory, I think, but the rest of them were pretty handily 4-1, 4-1, 5-0. That first match versus Hawaii was 3-2. But they did a nice job out there, set themselves up real well. I think that kind of solidifies their position as long as they can beat the teams they need to beat and not lose against the teams they can't lose to. Which this
Don't lose
weekend
to
coming up,
Washington.
this weekend
Don't lose
coming
to
up is that
Washington. I mean,
Washington
hey,
game.
I'm just saying.
I
Yeah,
believe we've talked about it every year we've had the podcast is that Cal Washington game at the end of the season.
yeah, it's always my favorite. It's my favorite pastime, but obviously Cal definitely playing some different ball this year, and Washington a little more up and down. There'll be plenty of good volleyball around the country. I think I'm surprised with how not regional the final weekend is. Like it is kind of spread out this
Yeah.
year. It's like TCU's got Houston Christian, a Texas school, but then Missouri State's coming down, Grand Canyon's coming over, ULM's coming over. So ULM doing a little west, coming home, and then going right back southeast to play conference. We've got our historic UCLA USC Senior Day match, which is always a fun one. They haven't played each other as many times this year, so I think there'll be a little extra emotion to it, a little extra fire. Um, that's always good. Cal Poly decided to take a trip east before their Big West tournament, right? Going to Texas, playing North Florida, who's taking a huge trip out west before going back to Florida. Southern Miss, I'm not sure it's a huge trip, but it's a decent trip from Hattiesburg to Austin.
Yeah.
It's not exactly down the street. You know, we're seeing some really good ones there. Utah's flying down to Southern California for LMU's Senior Day. Washington traveling down for Stanford. I think we've got some really interesting like travel and competition. FAU going up to Tulane, right?
hmm
That's not a quick trip.
The one
Tarleton going to Tulane.
the one that really caught my eye was San Jose coming out to Tulane in New Orleans. Is like, are
I
they
have to
staying?
assume they're staying,
Are
right?
they
I
gonna
have to assume they're
stay
staying.
the whole week, or how's
But
that
they
working?
must be. They must be, right? Because I can only assume you're staying because you're thinking to yourself, we're going to play Friday, Saturday. We sit out here Sunday. Even if we went home Saturday or Sunday,
Yeah.
you're flying back on Tuesday.
Yeah.
So it's like you might as well spend the 3 days in an Airbnb, check out the French Quarter, check out
A lot of time
St.
for
James
some
Park.
beignets.
Yeah, have some beignets, relax. So I think good luck, Gary. Go get them. You'll see McNeese, you'll see Southeastern. So you've got a little free heads up of who you're going to play, and you're doing less travel than those guys, which could be a fun, interesting little setup. So shout out to them for that. Florida Gulf, obviously, and Jacksonville, traveling up to Columbia to take
hmm
on some mighty Chanticleers and some Panthers and some Gamecocks. So plenty of good volleyball going on. Michael, you got any matches you're keeping your eye on?
I'm gonna watch the LMU Long Beach match this upcoming weekend. I think that's a good one because Long Beach is kind of on that they're trying to win their tournament obviously, and LMU has their spot pretty much locked in. I also think Long Beach is a pretty much of a lock for the tournament, but that could be another big win on their record to really solidify them. So, and it would
Plus
be
move them
great
up.
volleyball.
Yeah. Plus move you up a seed or two,
Yeah,
right? Get you up to that 8 range, maybe even the 7 range. I'm not sure you want to, not sure how much good that does you, but maybe gives you a more familiar foe on the back end.
yeah. What about
Yeah,
you?
I'm excited for a couple matches. I think Texas Cal Poly is going to be really fun. It's a top 10 matchup. It's two teams that haven't played each other.
Yeah.
It is two teams that are more similar than I think they give each other credit for. Like I think they both play a super complex, fun offense. I think they are gonna both have talented rosters that are maybe not the big bruisers that you're gonna
hmm
see from like a TCU or a USC. So I'm excited to see. I also think Texas coming off of an off weekend and playing at home has some distinct advantages over Slow, who I assume is if they're flying out of San Luis Obispo, it's San Luis Obispo to LAX to Austin. I'm not sure that how great that travel trip is.
Yeah.
Um, Under the lights with the Longhorns screaming, I think it'll be fun. But also, the match of the fun schedules, North Florida and Corpus Christi playing each other, I think will be a really interesting one. Also at that same tournament, right? I think I want to see those two teams really shine, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's an opportunity for them to do it, and playing each other will be really fun. So I'm excited to see how Doug and Gail, go head to head in that match as they both try to win their conference tournaments.
And Texas usually broadcasts their matches on a live stream. Yeah, am I
They
mistaken?
broadcast their matches, like the
Okay.
Texas themselves matches. They might try to stream some other stuff, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, hey, we can always hope.
We can
But
always hope.
Colin, it's been another great week talking to you, and we will catch you again next week.
Thanks, Mike.